It had been months of Ashton this and Ashton that. Ashton likes it in the butt. Ashton doesn't shower. Ashton's screwing some guy in a noise rock band. Ashton's making another rape movie. I was convinced that either my himbo writer boyfriend was cheating on me, wanted to cheat on me, or was being seduced by his wispy-waspy writer/actress friend. I didn't even know if I still liked my boyfriend at this point, but this theoretical rivalry had added an intriguing friction to our relationship. Was it merely a paranoid hallucination bred from big city ennui and low levels of arsenic from cheap wine? Or was my boyfriend manufacturing the rivalry pulled straight from his cummy dog-eared copy of Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction? I'll likely never know the truth. Nights earlier, I'd committed the crime of drunkenly skulking down to his filthy bathroom with his Poverty Row barely functional flip phone. It was a rare evening when he was the first one to drop from too much Santa Carolina, so I took the opportunity and went hunting for evidence of betrayal. I found a few plausible deniability Mr. Charming texts on his end, but I didn't get far before the sheer beleaguerment of having to click back and forth between each inane message got old. As I put his phone back in the pocket of his relaxed fit jeans, I decided that she could have him. Of course, I changed my mind the next day, as I was wont to do. I'd been feeling gruesomely pasty and porcine that particular summer. Drinking a lot of booze, eating McDonald's, hadn't seen much sun. Beach ready my body was not, which was only fueling my fears of being cheated on. But why would I exercise or eat healthy, you know? When my boyfriend invited me to the skeletal Ashton's party, I wasn't about to miss it, even if I had to show up looking like a trussed-up pig. What if she made a move on him? What if he made a move on her? What if this was the ground zero of the greatest romance my rotten city of Toronto had ever seen, and it was conceived and birthed on the ashes of my fallen romance? No, not on my Tetris watch, Ashton. I didn't really know any of Ashton's friends, but I was confident they'd be just as drab and sneeringly pretentious as her, so I crossed my fingers behind my back and promised a night of fun to two friends to get them to come with me. One gal pal wanted no part of it, but she agreed to come along, and the other was more than willing to be my wingwoman, patrolling for any clues of chicanery. She loved to see a bitch make a fool, and I think she was hoping I would. My boyfriend's sonorous voice mingled with Ashton's infantilistic giggles down the stairwell as we approached the get-together. The mission was on. Let's go, girls. Insert Shania twang. Red Bull and Pinot sloshed in my guts. Red Bull and Pinot. I don't know why that sounds so weird. Red Bull and Pinot sloshed in my guts as I made my way up the stairs. My face was hot. I couldn't think straight. It didn't matter what I saw once I got to the top, because I could already see it all with my keen woman's intuition in my third eye. As I made my way up the final steps to the drearily decorated apartment, our six eyes met. The innocent and sweet Ashton pulled back and changed her demeanor from flirty and loose to poised and proper. My boyfriend threw up his arms in delighted surprise, spilling PBR swill onto Ashton's beige whatevers. He called out the unflattering nickname he'd given me in a welcoming tone, but it was too late, because I was ready for carnage. Seats to the freak show, baby. Yeah, I've got you covered. Let's get right with ourselves so we don't end up hiding in cupboards, floorboards, Faraday cages. In a few hard to tell every single day, trying not to become a doer. we project. My sweet darling, just be present and heal. I hope you feel safe with me in your ear. I've taken the blue pill, I've taken the red pill, I've taken the black pill and the white pill and every pill in between. All I did was fuck me up, so I got clean. I'm here still to tell you it'll be okay. If you wake up and you fucking do something, cheat codes to the Matrix, baby. Pod to help you leave the pod. Shed the layers of trauma and pain and realize you're a freaking god of the simulation we're co-creating. We're making, we're vibing high, straight off the chessboard into the sky. If my you and I. So why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe? Yes, I know my song sucks, and I'll eventually change it. So don't at me. Hi, I'm Larissa, and this is my podcast, Cheat Codes to the Matrix. 3.5 years ago, when I'd hear the word triggered, I'd conjure images of highly memeable, thrombosed, atrazine pickled soy creatures, bulging eyes, bad haircuts, anal glands vigorously self-lubricating in their hairy ass crack with each delicious accusatory possibility. Stinking up, every environment they encountered with the pungent musk of self-righteousness. Light the torches, mutant number 78. It's time to set fire to all of the hot, fun, and interesting folks. Mutant number 32, fill the milkshake cup with concrete. We've got another vaguely successful lower middle class person to lynch into ruination for trying to be happy. Well, those people still exist now in even greater numbers. I conceive of the idea of triggers much differently. At its most rudimentary level, you can say that a trigger is something that causes us to get upset. This can show up as someone saying something that we don't like, having an opinion we vehemently disagree with, an event, situation, a person, and because in 2023, whatever is triggering must be bad or wrong or alt-right or whatever, it shouldn't exist. It should be punished, canceled, exiled, vanquished. And has nothing to do with the person who is triggered. No. It's never about them. It's the existence of something they don't like that must be eradicated. Self-reflection has been canceled, if it was ever even there to begin with. The truth is, everyone plays out patterns. Everyone. And, I opened on a trigger of mine. Everyone acts out childhood wounds and projects them onto other people. This is how the human being works. And it's not a fabulous feature, but it keeps things interesting. We can also change this once we have awareness of it. Catch ourselves in the act. Recognize when we're doing that thing again and take a beat. Maybe backwalk a little bit. Apologize even. Enjoy a Wim Hof breather. do some tapping, journaling, crying, eating a slab of raw meat in a rainstorm, whatever feels right for you. This is primarily what I'll be focusing on in Cheat Codes the Matrix, save for deviations here and there. I want to raise awareness of what's happening to us as a species, as creatives and artists, as a global collective. There are many, many levels to our consciousness, our capabilities, and the nature of this reality. And just when I think I figured it all out, something new drops in. In upcoming episodes, I'll be teaching you how to regulate your nervous system, helping you heal shit, and understand more deeply how the 1%, trigger warning for people who are resistant to understanding the world around them, how the 1% use the media and engineered narratives and events to weaponize our emotions, our fears, limiting beliefs, and childhood and societal conditioning to get outcomes that they desire. They create situations, events, narratives to get outcomes that they desire. And how they do that is by playing into our emotions and our fears and our beliefs. And these outcomes are in their best interest, not ours. I know no one needs another dollop of what's wrong with the world in their ear hole, so I'm going to attempt to include something actionable, useful, or insightful in every episode. And maybe it'll be slightly entertaining. Because we, the 99%, are almighty. And if only a fraction of us join together from a place of healed wounds, or like at least somewhat healed wounds, and self-awareness or somewhat self-awareness, we have the power to totally turn this ship around. The only thing that's truly oppressing us is ourselves. For now, anyway. But let's get back to triggers. So when you think of what rattles you, even if you don't identify with the word trigger because it sounds gross, like I said earlier, you associate it with certain types of people, there's likely things in your life that you can pinpoint that irritate you, cause you distress, create an emotional response, like maybe a specific person in your life sets you off frequently. And then that may in turn make you say or do something a bit excessive, like scream at someone that you care about because you're like bottling up all this anger towards them, or they said something that just like created this like a really strong emotional response in you where you're like, I don't even know where that came from. It came from a trigger, it came from an unhealed wound. And sometimes we don't even project it outwards. Sometimes we just turn it inwards on ourselves, and then we engage in these like death matches in our heads while we're trying to have this like calming, wonderful herbal essences experience in the shower, but instead we end up coming out with like a freaking headache. And all of these are usually set off by like an event, a person, a word, a vibe, a tweet, whatever. It can honestly start from a tiny thing and then snowball. Like someone looks at you funny and you create this whole narrative in your head about it. But that's not what's really triggering you. That's kind of like the superficial meaning of trigger. It's not about the thing, the person, the event, the look, the tweet. What's triggering you is what you're unconsciously making it mean about yourself. And that comes from a limiting belief, which is a lie. It's a belief comes from an experience in your childhood or when you were younger, whether it was from conditioning, like words that were repeated by your family, an authority figure, or from a feeling, something that happened to you that created a response in your body. And every single person does this. Every last billion of us. When we say we're triggered by something, we're assigning blame outside of ourselves. We're saying it's doing this thing to me. This thing is making me feel a certain way. I'm even remiss to examine or reflect because it's bad, it's evil, right? If it's upsetting to me, it must be bad. Where we should be looking is at the meaning underneath the trigger, because that's what we're actually upset about. It's what we're making it mean about us. You are giving the trigger energy and meaning. A trigger is a projection of what's going on inside of you. It's something that puts you into a state of fight or flight. It's something that feels unsafe, threatening, and dangerous, even if it's not. Okay, well, if it feels unsafe, it probably is, Larissa. Absolutely, there are times where this is fucking so true. And sometimes if it feels unsafe, it is because our intuition is telling us to get the fuck out of Dodge, or that a person has like a kind of energy that our body recognizes as dangerous because it actually is dangerous. And that's like our primal instinct kicking in. And we should listen to it, especially if you live in a city or somewhere sketchy, somewhere that is actually unsafe. When I lived in Crackdale, Toronto, I was walking down the street. It was like 3 a.m. I used to work at this shitty bar and get home at like 3 a.m. It was horrible. And I would have to walk for like 10, 15 minutes after the bus stop. And I lived in a really sketchy neighborhood. And I was just walking. I was very close to my house, or the Roach motel that I lived in. And this guy was walking towards me, and he was just this little tweaker, just wearing, I don't know, like some kind of dirty hoodie and like dirty jeans, but he wasn't really like, didn't stand out, you know what I mean? He was just like some guy. But I felt this energy like a lightning bolt through my body, and I was like, this guy's gonna fucking do something to me. Even though I had no actual proof. He didn't look like anyone who had ever done anything to me. I just had this feeling. And as I passed him, I was like, run. My mind told me fucking run. And I quickly looked over my shoulder before I like started to run. And he had stopped behind me and had turned around and was staring at me. And I fucking just bolted. And he chased me to the front door of the apartment building. And I missed, like, it was like a 2-second window where I got in the door, I pulled the door shut, and he was standing on the other side. It was terrifying. And these things, like, you should always listen to that where it's like, run or no, you know what I mean? Like, don't get in that guy's car. Don't accept whatever that offer is. If there's like that kind of sensation, I absolutely encourage you to err on the side of self-preservation, even if you end up being wrong and looking like a lunatic or an asshole. But that's not what I'm talking about here. How that scenario might look if I was acting out of like a trigger might be like, oh, this guy, like it's not 3 a.m. in the morning. Let's just say it's noon, okay? And there's all kinds of people around and I'm not in danger. And I see this guy on the street walking towards me, and he looks like a shitty ex I dated, or he looks like someone who once spit on me on the bus or something. And I just look at him, and I'm with my friends or something, and I'm like, look at that guy. That guy's a fucking scumbag. And they're all like, yeah, he's a scumbag. Get off the street, scumbag. You know what I mean? So that's like projecting and assigning blame to somebody else for something that they haven't even done. And that they're probably not going to do because I was acting out of something in my past, right? So hopefully this makes sense. I would love it if anything while you're listening to this podcast resonates, please at me, Cheat Codes the Matrix on Instagram, or I don't even know how to make a comment on a podcast. I have no idea how this shit works. But let me know if you feel called to do that. More often than not, when we're aroused into an overly emotional state, it's connected to a feeling we had in childhood or an event that happened to us in the past that made us feel unsafe. Whether it's because we experienced actual trauma or because the event felt traumatic to us. So what I see a lot of in the self-work space, which if you're not familiar with the space, you probably won't know what I'm talking about, but there's a lot of back and forthing about what constitutes trauma and what doesn't. And to me, it's like, yeah, you know, like don't tell a war vet that you're traumatized because someone like ran over your dog when you were 5. Sure. But the difference is that it doesn't actually matter. So and I'm not saying this to invalidate anyone's severe trauma, but your body, it's like an unconscious response in the body. If something feels unsafe to you when you're younger, something happens to you, and it can be kind of small or it can be like devastatingly huge, your body will store it as a trauma response regardless. It doesn't discriminate. And so you can have a much stronger trauma response to something if it was a very significant event or series of events that occurred to you, but the body records it in your nervous system as a trauma, even if it's like a low level one, like being embarrassed in front of the class or something of that nature. And when that is activated, we feel unsafe. And I'm using the word unsafe as almost an umbrella term because all kinds of emotions can feel unsafe to us, whether that's embarrassment, shame, fear, guilt, anger, feeling stuck, trapped, betrayed, exploited, not feeling seen. Like there's tons of different things that will feel way more dangerous and life-threatening to you depending on your lived experience and your personality type. So for someone, embarrassment might be like, whatever, you know what I mean? Like they don't really get embarrassed. And another person might experience embarrassment as like a high level nervous system response where they go into fight or flight and it literally feels like they're dying and they have some kind of panic attack and they can't think. Because when we're triggered or in that dysregulated state, we're making the thing mean something more to us subjectively than it means objectively. And again, like it's our unconscious mind. We're not intentionally doing this. No one's intentionally doing this to themselves. Why would they, right? But what happens is the unconscious mind then goes into this like alert state and it's always on the lookout to avoid these feelings. But what actually happens is in the pursuit of avoiding these feelings, we end up experiencing them. So that's kind of the tragic irony of all of this, is that because the mind is always looking for evidence of these dangers, these things from childhood, these things from when we were younger, that we're scared of experiencing again, it creates and magnetizes situations in which we do experience these things again and again, or we go into this triggered state if anything reminds us of that. And what we focus on expands. So if you are constantly thinking something is going to happen, or you're worried about something happening, it's likely that it will actually happen. And I know that some people, when they first hear this concept, can be like, well, that's victim blaming. And I'm not victim blaming. This is just how the energy and this is how the universe operates. And you don't have to accept it for it to be true. So it's a universal law. What we focus on expands. It's like you might see, like you might have a friend who's like a bit of an Eeyore and they're just so unlucky. Like no matter where they go, they trip on their face all the time. They lose all their money. They get stabbed. It's like just this never ending like spiral of bad luck. And that's because they literally on some unconscious deep level believe that they are unlucky. And the same in reverse. You might know people who literally shit don't stick to them. They're Teflon people. They just go through life and they just magnetize. They win the fucking lottery. They're just so lucky. And it's because they don't have all the sticky shit around these certain beliefs. They just believe, yeah, good things happen to me. And so they do happen to them. And it's wild. If you've never heard this kind of concept before, this might be like, what? No way. Trust me. Try it. Start telling yourself what you really wish would happen to yourself and just keep saying it over and over and over again, and you'll start to notice changes happen in your life. I will be talking more about this in future episodes, so stay tuned. But I want to kind of get back to the trigger aspect of this, because all of this might be almost like a bombardment of information to you. If this is completely new to you, you might just be like, what the fuck? Or if you're sort of already familiar, this might seem kind of simple on the surface, but once you deeply grasp these concepts, they significantly change your entire perception of yourself, others, and reality. What's possible for you, what like kind of impact you can have in the world, what you're going to be able to unlock for yourself. But to get back to the opening of the podcast, if I connect with like old Larissa in the past, I might hear this information and think, Ashton hitting on my boyfriend wasn't about me. It was about him and her. And how she's a hoochie who just wanted to prove she could take my boyfriend, and he was loving it because he's a horny clown who was hedging his bets to see how many blowjob levels he could unlock before he got caught. No, me in the past, that's not what was happening. Even though, yes, she may have been hitting on him and he may have been encouraging it or the one instigating it the entire time, that's not actually what was triggering me. What was triggering was that I was making that interaction mean something about me. That when I let someone in, let them have some kind of power in my life, they can hurt me, exploit me, that I'm a disgusting, unlovable freak, and what I hold dear can be stolen, and it will be stolen. And I was projecting inadequacy onto this chick because I was trying to make this web series that was a bit of a runaway shitfire, and I was struggling to finish all of these things I'd been writing, and in my mind, I was like, this fucking mediocre chick is getting grants and getting films greenlit, and now she's messing with my fucking boyfriend. And it just felt like the classic pattern that I had already played out multiple times. And so this is what was happening in my subconscious, which was being fueled by experiences and beliefs that I had left over from childhood. That no one understands me and I don't understand them, that I don't get to have love or be functional or happy. That's for other people. That's for the hoi polloi. And that pattern has come up in my life over and over and over, where I want these things, healthy relationships, opportunities to have consistent creative output that I can support myself with. But because of these beliefs telling me in the background, I'm not like that, it wouldn't stick. When you're trying to be in a relationship with someone or build artistic stability, but the stories in the background say, I'm not capable of keeping it together. I'm a disaster. People hate me. I can't operate on the same level as these fucking cretins. Only other people get to be happy. Only basics get to be happy. Only stupid people are happy, and they get to have what they want, but I don't ever get to have what I want. Because of these narratives, I kept self-sabotaging any progress I'd make. Because we act out our belief systems. What we think and feel and believe is how we behave. They become self-fulfilling prophecies. And I would hate anyone who I thought was adding to these problems for me, because I was already struggling so much to even be like a remotely functional human being without all of these additional obstacles. And every time it would happen, it would be like one step forward, two steps back. It would just be like, see, I knew it. I don't get to have these things. I'm a fuck up. I'm broken. I can't rise to the challenge. I'm just totally like a wretched whatever. So over months, I kept reading between the lines of what my boyfriend was saying and doing, and the energy behind my thoughts intensified. And then everywhere I looked, it was just enforcing these beliefs I was fixated on unconsciously. And again, we don't know that we're doing this. I didn't know that I was doing this. I wasn't doing this on purpose to myself. But it was satisfying this unconscious urge that I didn't know I had to prove my own belief system right. This flawed belief system that was keeping me stuck and miserable. And I mean, this is one of the belief systems that is the reason that I got trained in mindset coaching. I didn't even want to be a mindset coach. I just wanted to understand why the fuck I was so damaged and why I couldn't fix myself or break any of these patterns. Because I didn't understand, even though I had read all these articles on the internet and I was learning Enneagram and I've been doing some shadow work and all this other stuff, but I just did not understand. Because we don't know that we're doing this to ourselves until we know that we're doing this to ourselves. And once you understand this concept, what happens is you will start to catch yourself in the act. And then it's like, wait, why am I doing this? Wait, why am I telling myself this story? Wait, why do I hold on to this belief, this unuseful belief that is fucking me, that is literally ruining my life? I can just change my belief, change my identity, how I see what's possible for me. I can choose a different way. But until you know that, you don't know that. You don't know that you have the choice to do that until you know that you have the choice to do that. If I had been brimming with confidence and fully embodied exactly me, who I am now, but my beliefs were that, and I was embodying them, that I was confident, I was a limitless creator, that I was spectacular, people love dating me, I'm super hot, I'm amazing, I wouldn't have been sabotaging things the way I was. I probably wouldn't have given a shit that my boyfriend was like, I wouldn't have even probably listened to whatever he was telling me to begin with, instead of reading into every little detail. Or maybe I would have just been like, you know what? You're doing some thing to me and I'm actually not interested in playing out these toxic patterns, so goodbye. Or maybe it was an imaginary feud, but I wouldn't have even created the imaginary feud if that's the case, if I didn't have these beliefs that were constantly seeking evidence that I was fucked up and no one could really love me and I didn't get to be happy and I was broken. So we're doing these things unconsciously on autopilot. And again, I just want to reiterate, it's like, no one's doing this on purpose. I was not doing this on purpose. And so those disempowering thoughts and feelings were just running roughshod through my nervous system and were what took hold of me in the moment when I did what I did. But let's get into some other examples first. If you're able to, just close your eyes for like 15 seconds and imagine the scene. Just imagine you're in a coffee shop. I'm going to call it Starfucker but you can think of it as whatever kind of coffee shop you want. Maybe you can see like the cases with the pastries. You can smell the coffee. There's other people in line, or there's noise or whatever. There's, what are coffee shop noises? Sipping? Ew. So you place your order. And you go up to the counter, you place your order, and the barista gives you a weird look. And they're making your strawberry frappa cholesterol chai Lux on ice, whatever, and they give you another weird look. They gaze at you just like a little too long. And when they hand you your drink, they smirk at you. Not only that, but it looks like your name's misspelled. Maybe intentionally so. Maybe it's even rude what it says. Or it looks rude. What are you thinking in this moment? Does any sensation appear in your body? Any tightness? Shapes? Feelings? Thoughts? Maybe something like, I knew it. The barista's staring at my giant zit. Everyone's staring at it. It looks like it's about to explode. I'm ugly. Or maybe you were thinking, I knew it. I look so hot today. The barista wants me. Oh my God, they're eye fucking me. Or maybe you're thinking like, oh, I knew that drink. I knew I shouldn't have got that drink. The barista's looking at me funny because even she knows I shouldn't have got that drink because it's going to make me shit my guts out. No one likes that drink. Why did I order it? Or maybe nothing came up for you. So that's the situation, and it is kind of boring, but I want to keep it as simple and relatable as possible so that this concept is easily understood as I try to express 3 different iterations of it, of a scenario, to sort of really drive home what a trigger really is and what's actually happening inside of somebody's nervous system when something is activated for us. And my intention with this is, you know, everyone's biased. I'm biased. I've worked a ton on my triggers and I'm still biased as fuck. Like, it's not to become some kind of like perfect, holy being. It's like, this is literally to help you catch yourself so that you're not a maniac. A maniac in a bad way. A maniac in a good way is okay, I think, because I like being a maniac. But it's so that you can start to actually catch yourself where this bias is not serving me. I'm projecting. I'm being triggered by something that's like literally imaginary. Okay. So the first player is Gary number 1. Gary number 1 is a 40-something-year-old white, probably closeted, upper middle class Christian, Republican, conservative, MAGA, whatever you want to call him. And he's in a bad mood because another pride parade has made him late for his weekend plans, but he needs his caffeine hit before he gets in a game of condo roof golf or something. Now, the barista is a spindly, flamboyantly gay, white, 20-something-year-old with a rainbow pin on. Gary number 1 can't help but roll his eyes at the twink. Does he have to be so fucking obvious about it? I don't need to see his sex life broadcast at me. And the barista's in his own little world and not really paying attention. And he hands Gary, number 1, the overtly frivolous drink that he just ordered. And the first thing Gary number one notices outside of the barista's hands looking as if they've never seen a day of man's work in their life is that he misspelled Gary's name to read gay. Gay. And now Gary's looking at his frappa, what the fuck, and he's thinking, this little freak is trying to insinuate that I'm gay, or he's trying to hit on me because he's a pervert, and maybe he like jacked off in my drink. And so Gary throws it out, writes a bad Yelp review, and vows to never come back to the glory hole known as Starfuckerbucks. Or maybe Gary number one's a drama queen, and he throws a fit. He chucks the drink at the side of a bin and screams about the raging homos. And then the barista gets upset because the customer's being homophobic and he's gay. And the barista grew up with a super conservative dad who rejected him when he came out of the closet. He was threatened, either you've got to go spend 3 months at Camp Pray the Gay Away or you're out of the house. And so now between the two of these guys, it's just a projection shit show in the coffee shop. And one of the other baristas, she goes to pick up the frappa, whatever, just to clean up the mess. And she realizes, well, there actually is an R. It did say Gary, but it's in sloppy cursive writing. And so it kind of looked to Gary number one, who's got that big gay shadow, like it was calling him gay. Well, Gary number one can't come back from that because now he's like in his nervous system. He is not thinking. When we're triggered in this state, we're not thinking straight. We're just acting out of like an animalistic sort of primal place of fight or flight. Even though we're not in danger, our body feels in danger. So he just screams, fuck all of you, and storms out. And now Gary number one's triggered as fuck, vibrating with rage. He doesn't consciously know it. But while he's sitting in his car punching his steering wheel, he feels exactly like he did when he was 8 years old and his dad caught him innocently kissing another little boy on the cheek. His dad beat him into oblivion and warned him that if he turned out to be a fag, that he'd murder him. And so Gary's like shame is just fully activated and he's feeling how he felt when he was 8 years old when his dad beat him. He feels in danger. And the barista is also triggered as fuck because he has a very similar wound. And he just got shamed for being gay. So his shame trigger is activated too, where now he feels like this guy who reminds him of his dad just basically humiliated him the same way his dad did and made him feel unloved and rejected and disgusting and like a monster. And so both of these guys have these huge shame wounds around their sexuality that are like basically the same. And barista number one is so shaken and so distraught because he's so triggered and his hands won't stop shaking. He can't make any more drinks. It's just, he keeps dropping stuff because he's never taken my untriggerable as fuck course, which I'm currently in the process of making as of this recording. Get on my wait list at untriggerableaf.com. Yes, that was a plug. Free content doesn't pay my bills, you entitled vampire. The second player is Gary number two. Gary number two is a black Gary. He's tall, in his 20s. He just graduated some ultra liberal arts college and unsurprisingly can't find a job. He's barely scraping by, miserable that he has no tangible or financially viable prospects, and he's starting to think it's because he's black and not because liberal arts colleges are a massive scam. He's super frustrated, and he's had to apply for a job that he didn't even want to apply for, but he needs the money. He didn't like the tone of the interviewer's voice, and he's confident he won't get the job because the pudgy white woman looked like a Klan Karen. So Gary number two's going to drown his sorrows with a fancy drink using a gift card he got over Christmas. He feels kind of embarrassed paying with the gift card because he feels like somehow the barista is going to be able to tell he can't afford to buy a drink, and that's why he's using a gift card. So he's feeling a certain way when he enters Starfuckerbucks. He's already activated. He's already feeling attacked by racists, and he's already on edge about somebody judging him even further for his like financial standing. And this is usually what's actually happening with us is we have multiple triggers operating at the same time and they work together in a tornado. And so his server is some 42-year-old single miserable white guy who spends most of his nights locking his poor little chihuahua in the bathroom so she doesn't watch him beating off to Touched by an Angel VHS reruns that he picked up from a box in his dead mom's house. I don't know. Gary number 2 has decided barista number 2 looks phony. He's got this big Colgate grin and he's suspiciously wide-eyed and that always denotes guilt, to Gary, or demonstrates guilt. So Gary number 2 is already mad as heck when he saunters up to the counter. And then he hears the barista welcome him and he has a southern accent. Oh my God, are you kidding me? And then he sees Gary number 2's gift card and he gives him a bit of a look. And Gary number 2 does not like that. Now this guy's giving him a look. No, he doesn't like the southern white boy's condescension. And the drink now unexpectedly cost more than the gift card had on it, which Gary number 2 wasn't anticipating. Even though he got all these different extra flavored pumps, he's embarrassed because he's worried he's going to go into overdraft on his debit, and he's wondering if the barista actually ripped him off, like he charged him more on purpose because he's black. So he gets agitated. And then the barista sees that Gary number 2 is getting agitated and he gets agitated. And his eyes get even wider and he looks even more suspicious to Gary number 2 while Gary number 2 is trying to find $1 of change in his laptop bag. And it's just escalating into this weird ball of nerves. And finally, he just haphazardly tosses the change he finds onto the countertop and walks over to the pickup section. The barista's fumbling around making this drink while Gary number 2 watches him and he's thinking, like, this cracker cashier I know he's a fucking bigot. He's making me a bigot coffee. And the barista keeps nervously smiling at him and finally the drink is done. Starbucky and ooze overflowing as barista number 2 hands the drink to Gary number 2. And Gary number 2 sees that he spelled his name wrong. He wrote it as Gray, Gray. Well, that seals the deal for Gary number 2. You calling me Ashy? The barista. What? You calling me Ashy? Oh, no. The manager hears it and she comes over. Well, Gary's got something to say. Your employee's a racist. He just called me Ashy and he added a black text to my order. And the manager is some kind of like liberal white woman with a they-them 4-year-old at home, being slowly traumatized into their sleepaway camp, the sleepaway camp part of their teenage years. And she panics and she gives Gary number 2 another gift card, but for like $100. And then she fires the barista. What we didn't know about the barista is that he's dyslexic and autistic. He gets stressed out trying to use the cash register for shit like gift cards because he doesn't like really understand how to do anything. And he misspells names all the time. And in fact, he's so terrified of being called racist that he gets apprehensive around anyone who's not white because just like Gary number 2, he's been inundated with media messaging, paid for by the 1% who want us to fight each other, that all whites are racist pieces of shit and should be atoning for their privilege, ad infinitive, endless, infinity, blah, blah, blah. As a child, the barista was always picked on for being the odd kid out. He looked different from everyone else. Super short, bug eyes, nerdy, huge mouth. The kids called him all kinds of names. Retard, stupid, freak, because he was low-hanging fruit. And because that's what most shitty little kids do, because they don't know what they're saying or thinking. They're highly emotional, irrational, tiny sponges absorbing everything around them and reacting to it moment by moment. Like, we don't know that we're all traumatizing the fuck out of each other as kids. Like for as many kids that I was like, these kids traumatized me when I was like in grade school, when I was in kindergarten. It's like, I traumatized just as many kids. I wasn't doing it on purpose. None of us were. It's like we're all traumatizing each other because we don't have the nervous system regulation techniques. And yeah. And this wounding is one of the reasons the barista ended up working at Starfucker Bucks at the age of 42 with no prospects, because he never felt like he was worthy or competent enough to have more or be more. The barista wasn't actually as like incompetent as he is now because he kept telling himself he's incompetent. he started to believe it more, and then more evidence would appear of just his ineptitude. And now we're at the age of 42, and it's just manifesting all over the place for the barista. And he's really taken on board the messaging that he's a profoundly rotten person because he's a white man, because it amplifies the beliefs he already has that he's scum, he's worthless, he's shit. He even polices his own thoughts for fear of blurting out the wrong thing. He's so anxious that you can actually smell it on him. Gary number 2 was also picked on for how he looks, and he was called hideous, racist, disgusting names. His family moved to a small hick town full of low IQ racist types whose kids were probably hearing it at home while their parents enjoyed their soggy TV dinners to the nightly news, sounding off about the blacks or the immigrants. And then those kids would call those nasty names to Gary number 2. Because they don't think, because they're stupid kids. His family was poor, and the kids picked on him for that as well. They picked on him for his clothes, his bag, his lunchbox. Even though they were just as poor and were just projecting their own insecurities, Gary number 2 took this on, as we do as children, that this meant something about him instead of it meaning something about the kids who were just saying shit that came probably from their parents or their own thoughts. So now everywhere Gary number 2 goes, he feels like he's being judged for his race and his financial status because this was his lived experience, and it carved those beliefs into his nervous system. So then when he's going out into the world, like I already explained, it's like because you believe it and think it and feel it, you find evidence of it everywhere you go. Can you see how Gary number 2 and the barista's beliefs and fears were actually activating each other in that situation? They're both acting out of active trauma responses, whatever you want to call trauma or not trauma, I don't care. But this is what was happening in their nervous systems. And it's been trapped in there since childhood because they didn't learn how to release it. They didn't learn how to neutralize these feelings to regulate their nervous system. Gary number 2 is seeing the world through a scarce, victimized, and disempowered lens. And barista number 2 is seeing the world through a fearful, victimized, and disempowered lens. So now Gary number 2 goes home and he doesn't even drink his Starfucker bucks because a racist made it. He's upset about the whole day. He wasted his gift card. Why even bother looking for a new job when everywhere he goes, the mob will be assholes to him. He'll always be poor. He'll always be targeted for being black. And now people are ripping him off because of it. He feels hopeless and worthless. And when he looks at his phone, which algorithmically feeds him the very things that will enforce those beliefs, it digs him deeper into that existential hole. And he feels hopeless. Yeah, he got a $100 gift card. That doesn't mean anything to him because it's gross. Now he has even more resistance to abundance and money because now it's attached to, well, I only got it because the stupid lady felt guilty. Do you see how these things work? And the barista is contemplating calling up a BBBM to come sit on his face and suffocate him to death because he can't do anything right. And he feels hopeless and worthless too. But if she's anything like Gary number 2, the big black beauty will enjoy it and maybe stomp barista number 2's white chihuahua on the way out because it's probably racist too. And then Gary will be feeling guilty from beyond the grave. His ghost will be having the same pity spiral. Oh my God, it's my fault that my dog got killed because I'm a piece of shit. Let's talk about our third player, the last example. Gary number 3. And for the sake of diplomacy in this example, let's just make Gary number 3 50% white and 50% black. He's 50% gay and 50% straight. No, he's not bisexual. He's just half gay and half straight. Okay, deal with it. Gary number 3 doesn't care about racial politics or LGBT whatever. Because Gary number 3 knows it's all pure spectacle and media spin designed to increase hatred, crime, and division. And confusion. Gary's confident and secure in himself. He likes his life. He focuses his energy on what he enjoys, not what he hates. Of course, he has his own personal struggles, but he learned about the miracle of doing nervous system regulation work and self-awareness. Like what I'll be teaching in Integral as Fuck I don't care if you don't like these little drops. I had limiting beliefs that I shouldn't self-promote because it's disgusting and would make me look like a phony. And so I've overcome that. And if I'm triggering you with my little self-promotions, you can tap on that or do some breath work. So now Gary number 3 actively catches himself when he's on his bullshit, which doesn't happen with nearly as much frequency anymore. Gary number 3 hasn't had it easy. He's experienced racism from white people and black people because he's mixed. And he's asked overly intrusive and judgmental questions by straight people and gay people because sometimes he dates women and sometimes he dates men, but he's not bisexual. Just want to make that clear. He came from a broken home. In fact, his mom was controlling and abusive. He started working young so he could get the fuck out of there as soon as possible. And now he's in his late 20s. And he's working at a good vibe startup company and finding fulfillment with what he's doing in his spare time. He's in a stable relationship. He's in the Big Brother program to help kids who are going through what he went through. He helps run a co-op garden in the city to provide healthy food for struggling families. He teaches kids reading and writing because that's what he struggled with. And he knows the way to help the young is to encourage them and empower them, not to tell them disempowering narratives about themselves like that everyone hates them because they're black or a boy or gay or they're straight or that they're evil because they're white or straight or whatever. And he certainly doesn't do anything like the overly eager, deeply, deeply predatory, creepy adults that demand children to find their sexuality and gender and look at comic books full of images of dick sucking. None of this even crosses Gary's mind because he's self-aware and not a broken, mentally ill person trying to damage children with ideology. And you might have noticed, I am putting my bias, my bias spin into this podcast. And I just want to remind you that it doesn't mean you're going to become some Yoda with no opinions by doing this work. I just don't get triggered by it anymore. Gary knows what matters is giving kids a supportive role model and tools to be resourceful, independent, confident, and all around decent humans so they don't turn out like Gary number 1 or number 2 or the baristas. Now, Gary number 3 gets the freakiest looking barista of them all. Gauge holes here, gauge holes there, tattoos of Satan down the nose, scales on his face. You know what? I think his fucking neck is bleeding too. And this barista gives Gary number 3 the scariest look. Like, this barista has like white contacts, eyes rolling back in the head, licks his lips, lusciously licks a giant cold sore that's taking up a giant chunk of his face. And instead of writing Gary, he just draws like a middle finger symbol on the cup. In fact, he didn't even get the ingredients right. He totally made him a different drink than what he asked for. But Gary number 3 is just like, takes it in a stride. He takes the Starfucker Buck smiling, says a warm thank you because he loves treating himself once a week to this calorific delight before he goes and burns it off helping the old hippies and bored grandmas at the co-op. And as Gary number 3 is sipping his drink, even though it's not what he requested, he's like, you know what? I like being surprised. I like an interesting surprise, and this still tastes good. And I'm feeling generous. So you know what? I'm actually going to pick up some treats for the gals at the garden while I'm here. That'll brighten their day. So when he leaves Starfucker Bucks, he's feeling good. And he smiles at some lady on his way out and remarks that he loves her outfit. And now she's feeling good and she's smiling and her day's brighter. And the demonic goth barista wasn't trying to scare Gary number 3 or imply anything with the middle finger. Barista number 3 is just slowly dying because he took too much methadone that morning. But he'll have Gary number 3's abundant, beautiful face to remember as he collapses in a pile of spilled Frappuccino slime and floats off towards the spirit grid to be rebooted into this karmic hellhole. So this isn't to say that Gary number 3 is somehow better than the other Garys. And this isn't to shame Gary number 1 or Gary number 2, because, like, and you might have related to one of the characters in this vignette. But the point I'm trying to make is you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And if you don't know that this is what's happening inside of your body and your mind and your emotions, your nervous system, then how the fuck are you supposed to change it? Gary number 3 just had the tools and the wherewithal to use them. He got a pass that he learned this shit early, and he was lucky. And that's amazing. And now he's trying to use it to help all these other people in his life. So why don't more people know about this? Why aren't we taught this shit in school? This would be really helpful, right? To so many kids. Like, imagine learning these tools as a teenager. It would change your life. These very simple concepts. Why aren't we taught this? Why don't we know this stuff? Well, I can tell you my theory about why. I think that these are actively withheld from the general public to keep us in an easily controlled state of conditioning. And the more and more people that learn this, the more of a threat we actually are to the controlling interests of the 1%. When we don't have any awareness or control over the deeper meanings or origins of our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, we can be herded like sheep in whatever direction the media, government, celebrities, leaders, 1% point us in. Because it's very easy to trigger people. It's very easy to put people's nervous system into a state of fight or flight, panic, fear. And then we don't act out of integrity with our own soul when we're dysregulated like that. These concepts are not brand new. This knowledge is not brand new. And I just want to remind you that, like, we all do this. I'm not excluding myself from this pattern. When I began learning about all of this stuff in 2020, it was like the floor dropped out from underneath me. I have always prided myself on being hyper-individualistic, a free thinker, a critical thinker, like someone who sees, who has like zero fear about looking at the raw, dark reality that we live in. But when I actively started to observe my patterns, responses, and results, I realized I was acting out of my personality patterns and conditioning from experiences and beliefs created in my youth. And conditioning from outside of myself, which felt fucking disgusting to me, to be totally frank. We all have it, even if we don't like to think that we do. And all of us have skeletons in our closet or things that we wish we hadn't said or done. All of us. All of us have felt demoralized, ashamed, guilty, envious, hateful, frightened. All of us have done stuff that we wish we could hit the rewind button on and be like, oh, I wish I could do that over. All of us have felt treated unjustly, unfairly. And you can argue that you've had it worse, and maybe you have. Or that certain demographics, certain citizens have had it way worse, and that's also likely true. But an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I used to hate that saying. I have a long history of being massively vindictive. So that's never resonated with me. But now, the more I step into this path that I'm on, the more I can see, like, punishing and projecting onto people. And that can be a random person that you're just projecting onto because they fit a specific demographic. Or it can be someone in your life that upsets you and you're like, well, I feel justified. But are you justified? Or are you putting like a history onto them that they have nothing to do with? And what happens is that when we act out of this dysregulated state, it creates more dysregulation amongst everybody around us. It creates a negative ripple effect outwards, creating more and more limiting beliefs and putting people into this like fucked up state where they can't think properly, because hurt people hurt people. And this applies broadly to everything, whether it comes up for you related to race, gender, sexuality, class, religion, political side, or on a more personal level. And the path out of this lunacy can only be to become self-aware and fully own your individual strengths and forgive yourself and others for what's happened. And I understand that that can be really, really difficult. And hopefully I will be able to provide you with tools that will help you with that process. And this is a process. It takes time. But when you flex your emotional muscles, when you flex the emotional regulation muscle, you're actually modeling to others how to strengthen and flex theirs. And that creates a positive ripple effect. When you're embodying your values and your highest self, which, that's not possible to do 100% of the time. Like, everyone is going to have moments where they're, I could have dealt with that differently. But if you're on like net positive, you know what I mean, on average, making an effort to just be more conscious, it has a ripple effect and it begins to create the world that you actually want to live in. So consider noticing the next time you get upset, scrolling your feed, or have a visceral response in your body in a social situation, riding the subway, when you're at work, when you're with your partner, in an online chat, tweeting, whatever. This information, this trigger is revealing something inside of you that requires attention and healing. You can simply ask, what am I making this mean about me? And breathe into it and allow it to come up and repeat that you're safe. This is a quick hack, like an in the moment kind of thing that you can do if you don't want to draw attention to yourself. Just breathing nice and deep. What am I making this mean about me? And reminding yourself that you're safe. But you can also completely neutralize and release these things so they never come up for you again. I can't count how many beliefs and triggers I've had that I don't even remember having after releasing them. Luckily, I wrote most of my journey down as I've been clearing stuff. And it's been wild to review my old journals and notes because it's like I literally don't remember having that belief. And it's a process and it takes time, but it's so worth your while and it's so meaningful. And if you're an artist, like a writer, a creative, a musician, an actor, whatever, and you are not mining your own emotional landscape and lived experience, you're missing out on your best work. You don't need to read another book on the craft. You have a limitless amount of potential stories, a well of emotional, juicy pomegranates to suck on already inside of you. And I'll be talking more on that in a future episode. If you're feeling called to step into more self-aware states, I have a freebie to help you with triggers at cheatcodestothematrix.com or untriggerableaf.com. That if you want, you can download. I'm also creating a course on how to get your nervous system so regulated that you become a manifester of what you want and the stuff that used to infuriate you and keep you stuck in these shit patterns becomes irrelevant. So if that piques your interest, get my freebie and you'll get the occasional email. I really don't send them very often, which will alert you to when my program drops or any other workshops that I'm cooking up. But you might be wondering, okay, but like what happened with Ashton and the beefcake? Well, I beelined for the bathroom and began furiously texting my friend to find out if it seemed like they were flirting and touching or if I'd hallucinated it. She confirmed what I saw, guilty as charged. I was a vibrator of rage. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. I wanted begging. I wanted dead bodies. I wanted blood on the floor. And this story does not end with me taking the high road. No. I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system. I didn't know what the fuck was happening in my body, in my emotions, in my mind. I didn't even know how to reflect in the moment or after the moment. And I did something that was probably illegal when I was in that state. So I won't be revealing it on this podcast, and I apologize for the limp dick ending. But if I go to jail for anything, it's going to be for attempting to overthrow the globalists. So, but in that moment, in the wildly dysregulated state I was in, I did what I felt like I needed to do to feel safe, if you will. And our mind can twist itself into all kinds of pretzels to convince us that what we're doing is justified in order to feel safe. I felt publicly humiliated, but I knew if I reacted at the party, I would just look insane. And I wasn't about to let Ashton know that she'd upset me, because to me, that would signal that she's the attractive one. She has some kind of power over me. My boyfriend wants her, and I couldn't have that. So after a few minutes of sitting on the toilet, my bodysuit around my ankles, little white tits dangling over the phone I was angrily texting my friend on, I pretended everything was fine and I returned to the party. But then I continued to get drunker and badder. Did I cause a scene at this point? No, once again, back to me needing to hold the power in the situation. But I was not pleasant. I left the party and my boyfriend behind. Then I proceeded to break into the house that he was renting, and I went rifling through his room for more evidence. And I grabbed all of my stuff that I'd left in his room. And I dragged my bags with me to the Lakeview all-night diner with the two friends who were probably regretting joining me at this point, as they were now pseudo-accomplices to two separate crimes of passion. And after filling my guts up with greasy poutine and sobering up a little bit, I began to realize that perhaps I'd overreacted. And I was reaching the maudlin point of my journey. But there was no going back from what I'd done in the bathroom or breaking into my boyfriend's place. But who doesn't love a little over-the-top drama, especially when you can turn it into a watered-down vignette for a podcast? If you found this episode shifted how you see yourself, others, or the world, and want to, I would love it if you would share the link with somebody else or share it online, unless it's sharing it with my ex or Ashton, quote unquote. The more people that understand these concepts, the more quickly we can turn this steaming shitfire into the kind of reality we want to live in. DM me on Instagram if anything resonated with you at Chico's the Matrix, and I hope you'll come back. I would say leave a comment, but I don't even know how to do that myself on a podcast. If you want to review it favorably, feel free. I don't know if I'll be able to tell. I have a whole bunch of episodes I'm super excited to drop that I know will change your life and just shift things for you. And if you haven't already picked up on it, I'm chaotic and I don't really judge myself anymore for the fucked up stuff I've done in my past. So I'll be sharing all kinds of wild stories, which may offend you. Or maybe they're not as wild as I like to think they are. But anyway, if you want more, I will see you in the next episode. And I'm so glad that you listened. Thank you.